For those of you that don't know me, I'm Cynthia Schaus. I do quite a few things at the foundation. I'm a chair for the finance committee. I'm on the development committee. I'm a rep, and I also do the family support page. So that's me. But today you're here to see these guys, and they're doing the session for residential options. And the speakers are Amy O'Donnell. Then we have Brandon and Cindy Barnett and Rebecca Remberg. I'm trying to do this off memory here without looking. And then the Kurtz, Pam, and is it your daughter? Sam? Cool. So welcome, thank you.
Okay, can you all hear me okay? All right, I'm Brandon. This is my son, Skylar. He's 22 years old. He's a triplet. And so we'll be talking about the journey that my wife, Cindy, and I went through moving him into a residential group home. This can be kind of a hot topic. So Rick Wood is giving a session on legal advice. If there's anybody who's feeling judgmental today, you can help yourself to move over to Rick's session. He can handle that better than we can. And rather than, as the last kind of content session of the conference, we're not going to throw a bunch of data at you. It's rather we're going to tell you our individual journeys and stories. And I'm curious, in the crowd there, I can kind of see with the lights, do these statements resonate with anybody out there, that no one can take care of my child as well as I can, and this is my child's home, and they can't handle a transition out of their home? And this one really gets me. No good parent would turn over the care of their child to somebody else. Does this resonate with you? This is kind of what was going on for us when Skylar was right after he was diagnosed at about 16 years old. And a couple things happened that really changed my perspective on this. One is we came to our first Phelan-McDermid conference and saw Amy's talk on residential homes, and also Rick Wood's talk on self-determination and the pilot that he was going through. And it made me think that, okay, maybe this is something I should consider. The other thing that happened is my father had a stroke, and he went from the caretaker of the family, the strong one, the one who kind of managed everything, to not being able to manage anything overnight. And it made me realize that I'm one heart attack or stroke or fall or something away from the state sweeping in and taking my son without any kind of control or thought from me. And then the third thing that happened is COVID. And the kind of structure of school that he got to go to give us a break fell apart. And he was in the home all the time, and we had to ramp up the caregivers to support him in the home, and it kind of gave me a glimpse of the future. We were already running a small business of caregivers, and so ramping that up to an almost full-time job, it kind of almost broke me. So I realized that these are held beliefs that aren't always necessarily true. And so we decided right after the conference, based on Amy and others, to start looking at group home options, knowing we weren't ready, but this is a complex kind of system. Every state is different. There's no manual on how to do this. You have kind of county caseworkers, et cetera, to help you out, but they're not giving you information. You kind of have to extract it from them. And so we knew we wanted some time to understand what the system was like. And that's one of my main points, is take the time, whether you want to do this or not, you should understand the implications of it and how to get it done. And so we started looking for 2 years, and we actually went through the process interviewing, and Skylar was turned down by every group home in the state. Nobody accepted him. And after about 2 years, when we were thinking, okay, we're kind of ready now, a home accepted him. And we were cautiously optimistic and nervous about it, of course, but we're like, let's try it. You can always pull that back, right? You can always unwind that decision. You're in control, but let's try it. And we went through all the process. We fired all our caregivers, and the day before he was to move in, they backed out. And so we were left with no caregivers, kind of in a bit of a panic. And so what we did is kind of step back and realize the caseworker's like, well, we'll just start over again. We'll start sending his information around, see who bites. We're like, that's the definition of insanity, right? Doing this exact same thing, expecting a different result. So what we did is step back and realize that for the group home providers, it is their livelihood, it's their job. And so what we decided to do, and we're lucky that we were able to do this, is that we purchased a home, started a rental company, purchased a home, looked hard for a home, and found one that was just perfect. So we got lucky in finding a great home for him. And then we lease it to a care group, a care home provider. And we had to find a care home provider. And I'm not going to talk about the disaster that the first care home provider was. Cindy's going to touch on that a little bit. But ultimately, we got him into a situation where he's now stable in his group home, and he loves it. And starting to think about some of those premises that I originally had, that nobody can take care of him as good as I can. I actually wasn't doing that great a job because I was stressed out and I was quick to anger with him, and it was just so overwhelming that actually a team of caregivers in his own home was for us a much better solution. I realize this is a very personal choice and each of us are different, but for us, it was a much better situation. And we could be his parents and not his caregivers. It wasn't our job to change his diaper and make sure he got out to the park or went on a car ride. It was our job to make sure he was taken care of and that the home was running smoothly. In Oregon, group homes kind of get a bulk cash out every month, and they pay me rent. They pay our company rent for the home. Skylar's SSI then flows rent and board back to him, so there's a little cash flow that kind of works. But it allows us to tune the rent down, because I don't care if that thing makes any money for me, but it allows us to make it cash flow for them so they can pay their staff, because it's their business. So we can help with that by having that lever on the rent. And so this is what's worked out for us. And I'm just going to flip through a few pictures. That's the family in his new home at Christmas time. Skylar's there in the middle. His identical twin brothers are on the ends. Lovely little home that we found. We're able to kind of situate for him. It backs up to a park. So he has his kind of own space. He's very loud. We got lucky. We found something that was fairly isolated. That's us right after we were moving in the winter in Oregon in January of 2022. And we get to be his parents. We get to run with him, take him out for a few hours. He usually will tell us when he's ready to go home after about an hour and a half. He wants to go back to his home, right? And he made that transition. And, his other two brothers left for college, right? And so I think we realized we were doing him a disservice by not thinking that with all the issues that he had, he's also not becoming a young adult and doesn't want to live with his parents for the rest of his life. So he's really transitioned, and he's very happy when we show up. He gives us big smiles. We go out. He tells us he wants to go home. And I'm just going to show a couple of videos just to give a sense for what Skylar is like in his home. This is with his caregiver, his primary caregiver, Sintayu, in Skylar's bedroom. And Sintayu, right, that myth that only we can understand and love our children and take care of them. Great caregivers are out there, and they will learn your child perhaps better than you. They're a little more objective. And so this is Sintayu dancing with Skylar, probably to the Wiggles. He's still a big Wiggles fan. And he's just happy as he could be in his room with his caregivers who love him. And this is Skylar. So the other thing I'll say is they can work on things, right? We were just too overwhelmed to work on skills. And so this is a picture of that same caregiver, Sintayu, taking Skylar to the store and helping him shop, having him actually do some of the chores that support the home. And so he's checking out with some food at the grocery store. I wouldn't take him to the grocery store if I didn't have to. It's too chaotic. He takes them, and it works out great. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy. She's going to give you a little more color to our transition and our journey.
Well, this picture obviously is his living room, which because we used the first one in there and we purchased the home, we were able to kind of decorate it. It's of course not done, but we were having fun with a mid-century theme a little bit. So again, my name is Cindy. We live in Beaverton, Oregon, and that's our son Skylar. I also happen to be a clinical social worker, though I haven't worked since my boys are born, and I'm sure you can all understand why. So Sky was, again, 14 when he was diagnosed with the syndrome. He has a frame shift mutation. 2 months later, I was at my first, this is 2016, 2 months later, I was at my first conference in Florida, and Brandon wasn't able to attend, and I was a little overwhelmed, but I walked in, and I just felt like, oh my gosh, these are my people. This is our family. Skylar was on the spectrum, but we were told he had cerebral palsy, and he never quite fit in anywhere. We never felt like we quite fit in. And when I came here, I called Brad, I'm like, you're coming to the next conference because this is it. I feel so at home with the community here, and unfortunately, Skylar doesn't travel well, so he hasn't been able to join us. But anyway, the PMSF community has been a key support over the last 8 years, and I do want to especially welcome those of you who might be here for the first time. But today I do want to talk briefly about the challenges of navigating the issues of alternative housing options and how they can affect a marriage or relationship. Because like other special needs parent issues, whether it's hiring caregivers, fighting for insurance coverage, or my own personal health, preparing for and participating in IEP meetings, finding a residential home can be another part-time job that we are not trained for. And it too will be emotionally and financially challenging, time-consuming, and yes, it's going to require you to deal with yet another system. Instead of the school system or the medical system, now it's your local county and state governments. Woohoo! But first, I want to go back to a little earlier in the decision process, which is issues within the family. First of all, when considering alternative housing, it's likely that one parent will be interested in considering this option before the other. And the differences in opinion or readiness for housing options, it really needs to be addressed with very open minds, much respect, and very active listening. We all have different tolerances to chronic challenges, and one partner may begin to struggle with depressed mood, anxiety, insomnia, and other health issues related to the child before the other one does. And the other one might never, right? But this might include physical challenges. For example, it can be physically challenging to change a pull-up for a 16-year-old who really doesn't want to be changed, or getting someone off the floor at a store. And that will often require the physically stronger partner to take on a greater role when physical strength is necessary. Transporting a wheelchair can cause or aggravate chronic injuries, as I discovered. And cortisol levels can become out of whack, leading to a variety of immune issues for some parents. Whether the issues are emotional or physical in nature, they too can become chronic and require time and attention, and that just adds an additional stress to the family unit. Furthermore, the partner who expresses an interest in out-of-home placement might struggle with guilt, while the other parent might experience resentment because they are carrying more of the load, or perhaps they feel that the other partner should be tougher, stronger, and just deal with it. And of course, both people could end up feeling trapped, overwhelmed, hopeless, and helpless. And we both experienced that at various times throughout, the years with Skylar, especially when it came to unexpected things, caregivers canceling so we couldn't go on vacation, or, all those things that it really does add up especially when you're expecting something to happen and you can't do it. So yes, I absolutely encourage couples to seek out support from professionals if you haven't already, especially if one partner is showing signs of burnout, anxiety, or depression. Managing the stress involved in caring for a special needs child is so challenging already that the extra work involved in finding the right residential option can sometimes really bring couples to a breaking point. If I could do anything differently, I honestly would have found a really good therapist to work with us as a couple or a family early on. Ideally, someone experienced with special needs family issues before I had teenagers that were too busy or already a little too obviously resentful about the situation. As a social worker, I've always relied on supportive psychotherapy myself, but doing it alone wasn't really enough given our family's challenges. For example, we were looking for options for our son when he was in his late teens, and the options were very few until he turned 18. There weren't as many children's homes, which I imagine is the case across the U.S. at least. We were told there'd be, lots of homes available when he was 18. Of course, 18, our other boys went off to college, and we're thinking, that would work out really well. We'd be true empty nesters. We'd go to our sons, school weekends at college, the parent weekends. But he continued to get turned down, and we really had mentally prepared ourselves, once he turns 18, we're ready to do that. Let's do it. And then to hear no and no and no over and over, and the excuse was but they always said, well, he's too his needs are too high, and we thought, we can't handle his needs, and we thought, you're professionals. How are we doing it? We're just two parents, and. So you can imagine the difficult decision to mutually agree on an alternative housing option is perhaps the right decision, but we weren't really prepared for the emotions every time he was turned down. Of course, the final blow was when the home he was going to go to backed out. And of course, the county's like, we've never heard of this. One time in, 50 years, whatever. But, we're always the 1%, so... and yes, we have ultimately found a situation that's working out really well for us. And while that was one of the lowest points in our family, it's one reason why I'm speaking to you all today, despite my fear of public speaking. A couple of things I'm going to suggest real quickly. I would start sooner in the search process. I would nail down key questions to ask sooner. I would reach out more to community agencies and support groups to get connected with other families so that I could pick their brains about the DD housing options. How does this whole thing work? I would pay keen attention to any county assessments and understand how the scoring influences the decision process for the homes. They are not always accurate. Sometimes they'd get a score and say, oh, he's this level, so therefore, you're getting turned down a lot. We're like, let's look at the score. And we'd see they put down that he can feed himself. He's a full assist. So whether they made mistakes or not, that was also something to pay attention to. But so despite everything that you've heard, I also want to emphasize that our kids are more resilient than we think. When we look back, we can now see that Skylar did really want to leave. He wanted to go with his brother somewhere. He was ready to go. He was a young adult. And now almost every time he comes to visit us, like Brandon said, usually within 30 minutes, he's grabbing his shoes and bringing them to me because he wants to go back to his house. Yeah. So I'm just about time, but I just want to say if any of you would like to, you're welcome to talk to any of us afterwards. And I'm also in the Facebook group. And in the Facebook, there's a home group. So that's what I had to say. Thank you. Go. All right, darling. All right. You go.
Clicker. Do I just click the green thing? I think they're putting it up for you. Oh, okay. Just ask.
Hi, my name is Pam, Pam Kurtz, and I'm from New Jersey. And I'm here with my daughter, Sam. And this is our first conference. And we are relatively new to Phelan-McDermid, but we're not new to residential or special needs. So I wanted to do this because I wish that I was able to attend something like this when we were trying to make the decision with our son. And Sammy wanted to do this because she overheard me talking about doing it with my husband and said, well, I want to do it. I want to tell them about Ben and what it's like to be a sibling of someone in a group home. So here we are. I can't talk about residential unless you know a little bit about Ben. And because Ben and Sammy are my favorite topics to talk about, I'm going to talk about them. So this is a picture of our sweet Ben, who's 22 years old. And from the get-go, we thought Ben had issues. Before I had Ben, I was a special ed teacher, and I used to work with kids who had autism. And when he wasn't looking at me or wasn't babbling or wasn't developing normal play skills, I started thinking that there was an issue. So he was diagnosed with PDD-NOS at 15 months, and then officially he got the autism diagnosis at 3 months. And then for a very long stretch, we just settled into the fact that he had autism, and that was that. And it wasn't until our neurologist convinced us to have another go at a genetics test, even though we had done several in the past, that Phelan-McDermid came up. And much to our surprise, when we started reading about Phelan-McDermid, and boy, we found our people. It was our Ben to a T. So Ben has always been nonverbal, despite us trying PECs and sign language and augmentative communication devices. He had poor fine motor. We tried toilet training through several presidencies. He has no play skills, and the best way I could describe him, although it's hard, is he's really at the level of a 1-year-old in most ways. Ben has dysphagia and has had multiple choking episodes. We follow a feeding protocol for him. So his food is it's called minced and moist, where it's cut up tiny, and his liquids are thickened. And he needs to be closely monitored during feeding, or he'll stuff himself. Ben is the most hyperactive person that I've met. And when I tell you that of the many goals I had on this trip, my top goal was to find a kid equally hyper to Ben. Please contact me if you have one. Yeah, raise your hand, because that would make me feel so much better. The boy literally can't sit for 2 seconds, and I know everyone says that I'm exaggerating, but unless there's like raisins going in that mouth, like he just doesn't sit. Ben is an eloper. Despite a house with security as good or better as any prison, he once got out of our house in a foot of snow in his bare feet, and probably same that you all deal with. Ben has no safety awareness and would run into a street, or he just has no awareness of that. Ben is a constant chewer. The art company, raise your hand if you know the art company, if you've ordered from the art company. They know us very well. Okay, next slide. Okay. So how did we get here? It was a decision that came with time and a lot of sleepless nights. Ben goes through phases where he just doesn't sleep. And I don't mean about a night or two. I mean stretches and stretches and stretches, weeks of time of not sleeping. And as you can imagine, and I'm sure you know, not sleeping makes him more hyper. And 2 individuals in the house, my husband and I, you just reach a point where you can't function that way. You just can't. So that's probably out of desperation when we started talking about it, because we realized that we just couldn't function. And we had a meeting with our special needs attorney about a school issue, a separate thing. And we just kind of broke down and said, you deal with special need people all the time. Like, we can't be the only people in the world that are living like this. What do people do? And he started talking to us about residential and made the point of how, it would be better for Ben if this is how we thought his future was going, that, and Ben was 12 at the time, which I know sounds young, but that's where we were, that so many people decide residential is the way to go when they're 21, that if we had him settled and in the system and in a good opportunity in a good home, it would be smoother and everything would be better. So that's when we started thinking about it seriously. But at that time, I also realized how much we didn't know when my husband asked the attorney if we would ever be able to visit him. And then I realized that my husband thought it was like a jail, which, let me tell you, it's not. We see Ben whenever we want to. He comes home whenever we bring him home. It's an in and out thing. There was also the sad fact that we're getting older, and we literally just couldn't keep up with him when we were chasing him anymore. And having a 24-hour staff that can be up with him in the middle of the night, and then they get to go home and get recharged and refreshed, and they take turns with other staff, we felt like it was the only way someone could handle him at that point. And we just simply felt that he would be getting better care than we could give him. And I know that sounds horrible, but that's what it was. So how did we get there? Well, like I mentioned, we're from New Jersey. And in New Jersey, the main system for child care special needs is called Perform Care. And when you have a special case, and we were a special case, each county has a care management organization. And we were just so lucky that we got the perfect case manager that did not judge us one bit when we met her for the first time, and we told her that we were looking into residential. And she was amazing at trying to help us. We also involved our special needs attorney, which, I'm sure you all know how important it is to have a good special needs attorney. So our special needs attorney recommended a two-prong approach to try to get funding by asking our school district to fund his residential portion, and you can imagine how well that went over. And then we tried through the state, and that's eventually what happened. Eventually that came through. So during this time period when we're waiting and we're hoping it comes through, and yet you don't want it to come through and you're feeling all these emotions, it's really important to just try to have patience because it's such a difficult time period. So after it was about 1.5 years of lawyers and losing patience, it came together. And during that time period, I just want to mention how important it is to document everything. We had calls to the crisis team at Perform Care in the middle of the night when we just couldn't deal with the lack of sleep. We had a visit to the hospital's crisis center, document that too. They're all horrible moments, and you don't ever want to think about them again, but yet it's important to show the system how desperate you are, because you are. Okay. So eventually, Medicaid funding was approved, and a spot opened for Barnett Bancroft. And Bancroft has been around for years and years in South Jersey. It's very reputable, and we felt comfortable with Ben being there. We knew of another distant family member who had a child there. And he started out in the campus apartments when he was 12. They were only 15 minutes from our house, but honestly, that was a really hard period of time for me, as you can imagine. It didn't feel home-like, and every time I left, I would cry every time. So it was a very rough start. Eventually, staff recommended, and they felt that he could be in one of their group homes. And this is a picture of the group home where he was from 13 years old until 21. This group home called Carlton was 2 miles from our house. And not only was it 2 miles from our house, but it looks like our house. It's laid out like our house, and it felt like home. So it felt like a second home to us, too. At the time, we were going to the house twice a day because this is a whole nother presentation, but we were trialing medical marijuana, and we needed to be the ones administering it. So we got to know the staff very well, and they got to know us well. So we were there all the time, and this was wonderful. And then eventually, Ben was accepted into their adult program, but he was at another home for a short period of time, too, that we call the resort home. Other people call it the resort home. Easily the nicest home with a huge kitchen, a pool, and a private bathroom that's nicer than any bathroom I've ever seen. Ben was living the life, and we were still seeing him twice a day. So this is Ben and Keno. Like I said, some of the staff members, they become family to us, and Keno was one of them. And it was really amazing to see what kind of relationship can develop between Ben and the staff members. So we were just always so lucky that we had amazing people. Okay. This is a picture of Ben at the resort with another wonderful staff member. This is where he is right now. Now that he turned 21, we're adjusting to him living further away. We're getting to know the new staff members. He just graduated high school and is starting his day program. And we're learning to have a new relationship with new staff members and figuring out, expectations for communication. He's an adult now, so I want to hear what's going on with him every day, but the staff don't always feel that way, so we're working through that. Real quickly, because I'm going over my time, list of things that I wish I knew years ago. Like Cindy said, I think, do not wait until it's an emergency situation. Become BFFs with people at the house. My husband would bring over munchkins. We would get to know their family. This way, it really becomes like the second family. Make it a mission to get to know the other individuals in the house, their parents and guardians. We've had issues with the air conditioner being broken and it not being fixed in time, where we were able to communicate with the other parents and we were able to gang up and get the job done. You will feel grief in waves and know that that is normal and okay. Sometimes I'm okay, and sometimes I'm not, and it goes up and it goes down, and it's okay. Watch everything and make sure the staff knows that you're watching, because, it's better that they know that you have eyes on everything. Just judgmental people. If unless you were the ones up with me in the middle of the night for months on end, helping me clean up my kid, you don't get a say or to have a judgment in what we had to choose, because you weren't there. We try to keep holidays special, just as special as they were. Know that you're going to be okay, your kid's going to be okay, and your family is going to be okay. And know that siblings can be amazing. It wasn't always that way when she was younger, but as she's grown, their level of understanding and acceptance changes, and it can happen. So here is Sam.
Hello, I'm Sam, and I'm the younger brother. What did I? Okay. I'm the younger sister of Ben Kurtz. Through the years, I have had quite a journey with Phelan-McDermid and the features it had. I remember when I was younger, around 6 or 7 years old, I never understood why Ben was so loud or why he would always try to chew on my stuff. I knew he had autism, but I never knew the specific stuff. When I was in 3rd grade and it was Autism Awareness Week, I was very educated about autism and PMS. especially my brother's diagnosis. So I had expectations about the Autism Awareness Week. I finally saw the flyer and I was like, seriously? Wearing crazy hair and blue clothes? What does this teach about autism? So I was set on a mission to spread awareness for my brother. I made a presentation for my 3rd grade class, and I went to another class to present it to. It was a hit, and I did it again in 4th grade, and I heavily approved it. I also went back to my elementary school this year to do it for the same teachers. If I hadn't done that, then I probably wouldn't be here now. Since my brother is residential, it makes it harder for me to explain. It's also generally harder for me in general. Sometimes I will miss him when I can't see him, but I know it's easier for everyone. He has been residential since I was 2, so I don't really remember the times he lived with us. But I know he has everything he needs at his group home. So one Halloween, I had a few friends over, and of course, I really wanted Ben over too. So Ben was over, and one of my friends thought he was contagious, and they got all weird. They also tried to avoid him, and I was super mad. I thought my friend had grown past thinking that. Even after I gave a whole presentation about autism and Ben, they still argued when I mentioned I had a presentation. For me, having a brother who has autism and Phelan-McDermid Syndrome, people always say, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that." And it makes me mad. Why? He isn't sick, he isn't hurt, he's just autistic. Kids usually don't answer when I say that my brother's autistic. It's usually the adults who say they're sorry. I usually stay silent or say meh because my brother's autistic, but that doesn't make it okay to treat him like he is sick or hurt. And the response is oh, and it's an awkward response for me in general, and it's usually from one of my friends or another kid. I usually say he visits often, and then either it ends or we move on. Also, as a sibling, I feel very proud of Ben. I love him so very much. And I know that sometimes jealousy is a problem with having siblings, and one of them has autism. So I have a few tips for jealousy. My first tip is spend time with them together and separately. Have a special day with both of them, especially so they can bond. But always try to have a day where you spend some one-on-one time with each of your children. My second tip is if your child with autism or Phelan-McDermid Syndrome is struggling to bond or socialize with your other child or struggles when they have friends over, try to set up something fun for them all to do, like going to a park, playing a board game, charades, etc. If your child with PMS doesn't like when your other child's friends are over, when your other child's friends come over or gets upset when they come over, try to pinpoint what is making your child with PMS upset. Perhaps it's they share a room and things might be out of place afterwards, or you might go to eat somewhere differently when they come over. Maybe when you know a play date's coming up, try to hide things that your child doesn't want out of place, and maybe buy the food that you want to serve ahead of time if you can. Another tip I have is make sure your other kids' friends understand your child with PMS and why they may act like they do. Autism and PMS is generally a hard subject for children, and it's hard to explain to other people, especially if the person who has PMS or autism can't explain it themselves. Sometimes it's hard to find the words, so tell your child to try to explain it if their friends ask. But if they can't, make sure they know they can ask you to help explain it. That's the end of my time now. Thank you for listening to my speech.
I'm not sure how I'm going to follow that. Hi, my name is Rebecca, and I am the mother of Amelia. She's 21 years old, and she currently lives in a group home in Wisconsin. So Amelia was born in 2003. When she was around 9 months old, I started to notice wasn't making eye contact, not meeting the typical milestones as expected. She did not start to roll over until she was 7 months old. She first started sitting on her own at 1. She did not crawl till 16 months old and first started walking at 22 months old. She's never had any words and has always had a very unsteady gait. Initial fish testing at age 3 was negative for any abnormalities. Further assessment was done at Children's Hospital in Milwaukee at the age of 4. Evaluations were done by occupational physical speech therapists, showed significant delays, and then further genetic testing was done at that time. In March of 2008, right before her 5th birthday, she received the diagnosis of PMS. At that time, there were only about 250 kids worldwide that were diagnosed with the syndrome, so she is one of the earlier kids. Throughout her childhood, Amelia attended public school, elementary school. She was in a secluded classroom with other kids with special needs. Starting with 4th grade, we decided to integrate her into a regular classroom with a one-on-one aide. We also had her in ABA therapy daily at home. I'm supposed to be changing the slides. Sorry. Oh, that's the wrong slide. No, sorry, that's the next one. I'm behind. Oh, now I'm really behind. I'm not good at this. Okay. Once she started middle school, she became more independent with her service dog, Cora. A lot of you might remember Cora coming to one of the earlier conferences. Cora helped Amelia with her tendency to run. Of course, you all know the big safety concern with our kids, so Amelia was no exception to that. She loved to run. She got more excited when you chased her. She was not aware of any roads, lakes, obstacles in front of her. I do remember a certain instance where we were at a public park. Amelia ran to the end of a pier of a retention pond and jumped right in. Mommy went jumping in after her, and there was no way to get out of the retention pond because there were big boulders surrounding the whole thing. So luckily, some kind-hearted people came to the end of the pier and pulled her out, and then I had to climb up over the rocks to get out. So Cora remained tethered to Amelia. When she would start to run, Cora would lay down. And obviously, you know, she's not going to be able to pillow a 50-pound dog that's laying on the ground. And she wasn't smart enough to figure out how to unhook herself from Cora. We were also very fortunate to have an amazing caregiver for several of Amelia's years younger on, Rose. She was there to help us with Amelia before school, after school, and on several weekends. Amelia also attended Easter Seals Camp every summer to give us the much-needed respite that we needed and the time to spend with our family without having to worry about Amelia. As we looked forward to the high school years, we knew some decisions needed to be made. Just like everyone else, this seemed daunting. We didn't know what this looked like. We didn't know what steps we would have to take or even where to start. What are our options? What do we want for Amelia? What would be the best for Amelia? And that last one is what scared me the most because it made me stop thinking about myself and forced myself to think about Amelia. Her transition to the high school building and her new teachers went remarkably well. We did a lot of preparation ahead of time. Amelia would ride her bike from the middle school to the high school and then walk around the high school when they were still in session to get familiar with the location. And a lot of her high school teachers would go down to the middle school to spend time with Amelia, to teach Amelia and be part of her. So when she made that transition to the high school, there were familiar faces and it was a more familiar surrounding. She also attended summer school at the high school before her freshman year, and that also helped. But when it came time to finding before and after school help, that was getting more difficult. As with most of our kids and everyone else has mentioned, Amelia's not potty trained. So when you're talking to somebody about helping take care of her, that's like taking care of an adult that's in an adult diaper. It's not like you have a young child that you can just change their diaper. It's just not that way anymore. They have more adult parts. They're developing, and that is a lot of people are just very uncomfortable, with those types of situations. We also at that time started to notice more aggressive behaviors, and that was getting harder to control also as she got bigger. Obviously, I'm not a very large person, so it doesn't take much to knock mommy over. We tried after school programs, but the more aggressive she became, the harder things got, and they did not have the ability to care for her there. Then at age 15, Amelia started her menstrual cycles. This is when our life made a drastic change. Amelia started having severe anxiety, and her aggressive behaviors became absolutely horrific. We had a plan in place with her pediatrician that when her cycles started, we were going to stop them by doing the depot shot. Boy, was that a mistake. All it did is accelerate her aggressive behaviors. My family spent 4 to 5 months getting attacked, beat up. I used to lock myself in the bedroom when I was home alone with Amelia because I didn't want her to hurt me. It got extremely bad. Towards the end of that 3-month period with her depot shot wearing off, we decided to try to take her to her doctor to discuss next steps when it came to trying to control her menstrual cycles and hopefully calm down her behaviors. We got to the doctor's office, who, by the way, she loves her doctor, loves all the nurses. We got there. It took 4 nurses to get Amelia off of me. She attacked the living daylights out of me. The doctor came out, called 911 from her cell phone. Amelia was resistant to the police, was resistant to the paramedics. They gave her enough ketamine to tranquilize a horse, and she was still fighting. At that time, they took her to the emergency room where the same things continued. And mobile crisis came in and decided that she was deemed unfit to go home, which we knew 4 months prior, but we didn't know what to do about it. We just thought things would get better. But as with many of our kids, there's not a lot of services available for emergency. She's nonverbal. She can't tell you what's wrong. So she got put in a mental institute at that point. She spent a few weeks kind of locked up in a room with just one person. I would try to go visit. She would attack me the minute I walked in. The doctors had decided to stop all of her medications, so she wasn't sleeping at all. She wasn't eating. She wasn't letting them shower her. They weren't letting her do anything. So at that point, we had to go through court proceedings in order to even get her released to go anywhere because she was court ordered to be admitted there. She ended up moving in with her biological father for a total of 1 month under the guidelines that he would take her to her doctor's appointments. He would get her established with psych, and he would get her back into school, none of which happened. So at that point, we got her back, put her back in school. School was in medical lockdown easily 4 or 5 times a day. Teachers were getting attacked, but they knew that this wasn't Amelia, and they knew that who she was as a child because she had been with these people since she's been in 1st grade. So after some time, we finally found a pediatric psychiatrist that was willing to work with us. The first time she ever met Amelia, Amelia attacked her. Which was probably the best thing that could have happened because I don't know about any of you, but having a camera ready to try to take a video of your kid having a meltdown is next to impossible when you're trying to protect yourself from getting hurt. So just the mere fact that she was able to see what we were dealing with was the best thing that could have happened. So we got her on the appropriate meds. But the biggest thing for us was learning her triggers. Once we knew her triggers, we were okay because we knew what we had to do so she would not get set off. And then COVID hit. Schools closed. My husband and I were both essential workers. And luckily, my adult niece moved in with us during COVID and stayed with us because what do you do? What do you do with the special need kids during COVID? I mean, there's no online schooling for them. So we were very fortunate, but that really brought up a lot more topics. You know, she's a junior in high school. She graduates next year. What are we going to do? I will be the first to admit I was that parent that said I was going to take care of my kid for the rest of her life. Boy, did that change. After lots of conversations with social workers, school counselors, school teachers, lawyers, we wanted to gather as much information as we could about what our next steps were so we could make the best decision for Amelia. Her high school special ed teacher was a great resource. She was able to get us all the information we needed about Amelia staying in school till she was 21, and showed us what that would look like for her. We were able to talk to other families in the community who have gone through transitions as well. We were fortunate to have a group of social workers that have been with us since Amelia was very young. They hooked us up with seminars about offerings through the state of Wisconsin and the county where we lived. And we also had a really good contact with the DVR. They were able to help us with all the Social Security paperwork and submit all of that. Guardianship for us was a pretty simple process. We hired a lawyer because we just figured it'd be easier. When we wanted to make sure we were doing everything correctly. Paperwork was filed when she was 17 and a half, got the guardian ad litem. Not sure if any of you have dealt with a guardian ad litem before, but when you have a nonverbal kid and you have a guardian ad litem come, that was interesting. Because all she really did was give him a high five because she couldn't answer any of his questions. So with all those legalities at work, we had to make the decision if we were going to keep Amelia at home or continue school. We knew pretty early on that we were not going to continue school when she turned 18 and she graduated. Amelia loved school. She loved the routine of it. But we knew that she would notice her peers were not going to be there. They were always there walking her to class. They would have lunch with her. During their study halls, they would come to her special ed classroom. They would cook with her and bake with her. And we knew that she was going to miss that, and I didn't want her to see that. I didn't know what that was going to look like for her. So she walked the stage at graduation with her friends, and then we transitioned into adult life at that point. We did try all the day programs locally that would accept her, but within 2 days, Amelia would have attacked all the workers. She would not have participated in any activities or engaged with workers. She would just sit and look out the window. She would not allow anyone to change her when she was soiled. She would not eat. But what choice did we have? We both worked full-time. In-home help was hard to find. We also knew that staying home watching videos all day was not an ideal situation either. So we reached out to DVR about her possibly getting a job, but that also really wasn't much of an option due to her transitional and behavioral issues. So we knew at this point that placing her in a group home was our best option. Her needs were just changing. You know, we could no longer take care of a child with special needs. We were taking care of an adult with a lot of needs. Upon turning 18, we enrolled Amelia into community care, which is one of the long-term adult programming options. Once we were enrolled there, we voiced our concerns and stated our wishes. One of the main things I want you guys to know about this is there's people to help you. We had to get a disability rights advocate from the state to help us. We were not getting responses to our questions from the case management team. They just kept telling us Amelia was not being accepted at any group homes. They weren't offering us any assistance at home. They were telling us Amelia didn't qualify for this and that and this and that. Just a lot of no's, and we weren't getting answers why. So that disability rights advocate was in on all of our conversations and meeting, and she basically told me not to say anything, let her do all the talking, and within 6 weeks, we had a group home placement for Amelia. So Amelia is currently at a group home. She is doing fantastic. They're able to meet all of her needs. Has it always been that way? No, the first 2 weeks were hell. They would call me with her crying in the background, And all I wanted to do was go pick her up, but I knew I couldn't do that. So I know I'm getting yelled at because my time is up. All right. So sorry, those are pictures of Amelia. This is Amelia at her group home. And again, like everyone else says, don't wait. Start asking the questions now and start thinking of your child's future. Stand by your decision. You guys are going to get slack from everybody you see before you make a decision, while you're trying to make that decision, and after you make that decision. Don't let their feelings sway what's best for your child. There is a light at the end of this tunnel. I know it seems like there isn't, but truly there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Life goes on. You just have to decide what that life is going to look like for your child. Don't think of yourself during this time. It's not about you. It's about your child and what is best for them. And again, find yourself. I'm still working on it. It's been 3 years. I still don't know who I am without being Amelia's caregiver. But now I go to visit her and I'm mom. And that is one of the best relationships that I've ever had with her. Never had it until I was able to not worry about the who, where, why, and what of taking care of her. I was just mom. So thank you.
No, I'm kidding. Hi, everyone. My name is Amy. I'm honored to be here today to share a journey that has spanned almost a decade. I want to tell you about my son Jacob, our decision to put him in a residential group home, how this life change affected me, and the incredible progress he's made since then. But before we dive into this, I want to start off with some fun facts. My son has been wearing diapers or pull-ups for over 6,000 days. As parents, we know more about PMS than our children's doctors. You are the best advocate for your child. It is possible to break an unbreakable iPad case many times over. Most of our kids have sleep disorders, so as a parent, after 24 hours with no sleep, you may experience anxiety, irritability, and daytime sleepiness. And after 48 hours, you can have the same effect as being intoxicated. How many of you can relate to sleep deprivation? Toileting is a challenge for our kids. When Jacob was young, his nickname was Shitcasso. Think about that, and no explanation is needed. And every survival kit should include a sense of humor. 13 years ago, on Wednesday, May 4th, 2011, I received a phone call that changed my life. I remembered it so clearly. It was the neurologist from the Children's Hospital at Miami Children's Hospital. He called me and he said, "We finally found something. We have the blood results." I grabbed a kitchen napkin and I scribbled the following: 22q13.33, 700 worldwide, and the website. And he said, "Good luck." And that was one day I'll never forget. Jacob will be 19 years old in October. He absolutely loves his birthday. He loves when there's a flickering candle in front of him and everyone singing. Last year, it was the first time he blew out his candles by himself. And he is literally obsessed with the royal family. He enjoys taking selfies, obviously, and photos of his feet using his iPad. And after any given visit, I'll have between 300 and 400 pictures. He loves magazines. He loves shopping for new sneakers. He is mostly happy with a very sweet disposition, but if someone stands too close to him, he will punch someone or slap them. Jacob thrives in a structured environment and loves his teachers and loves his school. And just recently, he started to hold my hand. Before the diagnosis of Phelan-McDermid Syndrome, Jacob was diagnosed with other conditions. Some are related to the syndrome and some are not. You could see the list right over here. Hemolytic anemia, heart conditions, hypotonia, hypospadias, micronathia, asthma, autism, sleep disorder, A1 alpha antitrypsin deficiency, and like most of your kids, Jacob is nonverbal. There were so many years of sitting in the waiting room for different therapies, many trips to the hospitals for various reasons, either breathing difficulty or a random accident requiring stitches. I think he inherited my clumsy gene. I'm not sure if that's a thing, but I'm going with it. Caring for Jacob was so challenging. His nonverbal status added another layer of difficulty. Every day was a battle to understand his needs and comfort him in ways that he could understand. I felt like a magician, constantly pulling things out of this magic bag to see if anything would appease him for the moment. Having a nonverbal child, we rely on gestures and other nonverbal cues to help us any way we can. I remember one day watching Jacob walk with such a slight limp that to the naked eye, no one would even notice it. And I thought, let's take him to the hospital. And my husband thought I was overreacting, but we did take him to the emergency room and we did find a fracture. And there were other occasions when I noticed him either holding an arm or not using an arm, taking him to the emergency room, telling the x-rays, telling the hospital staff to find that hairline fracture that I knew was there, and I was right both times. Listen to your inner voice, listen to your instinct, and pay attention to nonverbal cues. During a routine visit to a pulmonologist, the doctor saw how exhausted I was, and he asked if I had any help, and I started to cry. I was so tired and in such a difficult mental space, and he was the first person to suggest a group home, and he even offered to write a letter of recommendation for me. He gave me something to think about that day. He planted a seed, and that seed is why you are here today. I started to research homes in my area, spoke to Medicaid, APD, a nurse from Social Security, countless people from various government agencies to gather as much information as possible. At that time, the only way to get bumped up from the wait list to getting service was to claim crisis, and that's exactly what I did. It was not an easy decision, and there was guilt and self-doubt and the fear of judgment from others. The sleepless nights and the countless tears and the unending worry made these days some of the hardest I've ever faced. However, as challenging as it was, I knew deep down inside this decision was made out of love and the desire to give Jacob the best possible chance to thrive. Let's discuss fear and PTSD. During this time, I had horrible nightmares that always ended up with Jacob dying a horrible death. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for saying this. Drowning, falling off a roof, getting hit by a car, not getting a blood transfusion in time. And my therapist taught me the difference between a possibility and a probability. And learning the difference between these two have been life-changing. As caregivers, we often lose sight of our own level of stress. We focus so much on our children, we forget to take care of ourselves. The constant fear and anxiety took a toll on my mental health. It is important to realize these feelings and ask for help as needed. Recently, another PMS mom and a good friend of mine placed her child into an ICF, and speaking with her has brought back so many memories of when Jacob moved. She spoke about packing her son's clothing, which triggered memories that I had buried very deep, and because they're painful. I blocked out these memories, and I told her that I was not strong enough to pack up Jacob's clothes and his toys and his puzzles and his medications, nothing. And honestly, I resented my husband for doing these things with ease, it seemed. I was not able to drive him on moving day, another reason to resent him. You know, we never spoke about that day. Years later, I was able to thank him for doing something that I was not able to do. After the move, weeks turned into months, and something remarkable began to happen. Jacob started finding his footing. The dedicated staff at the group home, with their specialized training and genuine care, helped Jacob unlock potentials we hadn't even imagined. He began to develop new skills, surely but slowly. With constant therapies, his social interactions improved. He started forming meaningful connections with his therapists, teachers, and staff, and housemates. The structure and routine of the group home provided him with a sense of stability, and that was crucial for his development. Jacob's progress has been nothing short of inspiring. Despite him being nonverbal, Jacob always finds a way to communicate and express himself and participate in activities that bring him joy and show a level of independence that we had only dreamed of. He loves shopping for new clothes and sneakers, and the local stores and employees know Jacob by name and are so kind to us. Jacob's structured environment gives him a place to thrive, and for me, it has allowed space for my personal healing and growth. I have been able to rebuild my life knowing that Jacob is safe and happy, and his group home has been an integral part of our lives, providing support system we desperately need. One of the most important lessons I've learned through this journey is the importance of asking for help. For those of you here today, whether you're a parent, a caregiver, or a professional, I encourage you to seek support when you need it, and it is okay to ask for help. There are others who can share the load, and it does not mean you love your child any less. It means you're making the best possible decision for their well-being and for your own. This journey has also taught me an invaluable lesson about letting go and allow other people to help. As a parent, it's natural to want to be the one to provide everything your child needs, but sometimes the best thing we can do is recognize when we need help and seek support that can truly make a difference. The decision to place Jacob in a residential group home was about giving him the best possible future, and it's been incredibly rewarding to see him grow into a beautiful young man. And to all of you, I want you to know that it is okay to feel conflicted. It is okay to feel a mix of emotions: guilt, fear, hope, and love. Change takes time. Be kind and be patient to yourself. Trust that your decision to your child's well-being will guide you through the toughest moments. Seek support. Lean on those of you who can understand your journey, like us, other PMS parents. And always remember that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. I am so grateful for the incredible progress my son has made. His journey is a testament to the power of specialized care, community support, and the unbreakable bond of love. If I was able to look into a crystal ball and see our future, it would have reassured me that we did the right thing, and just maybe it would lessen my pain of this experience. I hope it brings some comfort and encouragement to those facing similar challenges, and remember, it is okay to ask for help. Together, we can make sure that our children receive the care and support they need to lead fulfilling lives. And a final thought, I encourage you to trust your instincts, seek support, and remember that you are always the best advocate for your child. I found this fantastic quote online, and I'd like to share it. Parenthood is not about raising and celebrating the child. Sorry. Rewind. Parenthood is about raising and celebrating the child you have, not the child you thought you'd have. It's about understanding your child is exactly the person they are supposed to be, and if you're lucky, they might be the teacher who turns into you the person that you're supposed to be. Here are some selfies through the years. He's a ham. I call him a little diva. He loves having his picture taken. And if you are interested in learning more about residential group homes, specifically for PMS family, scan this. It'll give you the link to our private support group home on Facebook. My wonderful son, Justin O'Donnell, with the black shirt, can hand out business cards. On the back of the cards is also the QR link. Please reach out to your PMS family. We get it. We understand. We're either have been there, or we're going there, or we're going in the process. Thank you, everybody, for being here, for your time, and for listening. And please, we're here for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being brave enough and courageous enough to share your stories. I know, as we can see with everyone standing, how much it meant. So join me one more time in thanking this panel group. And with that, we are actually out of time for this session, and I know there might be some questions. So if we can get the poll up there, what we're gonna do is collect the questions. If it's for a specific person, if you wanna submit your question and note that. And we're gonna take this down after everyone has a chance to scan the QR code and use the link. But if you include your contact information, we will provide those questions to the individuals that you have them for and to the group, and they will work on getting responses for you guys. So please take a moment to do that, and then we'll take that down so that no contact information is shared on the large screen. And with that, we actually are going to be moving right into our next session. So just give us a minute here to change over. I know we're a couple minutes over. Thank you for your patience, and we'll be starting up here again soon.